Hi, Tim.
I'm Michelle.
How are you?
I'm good.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm here. I'm here with Tim Andreas. He is a retired architect from California. I've known him for many years. He is here, and we are going to have a podcast. This episode's podcast is sponsored by Priority Door and Window.
Doors and windows on Miramar Race. Neighbor's largest door and window showroom open to the public. We specialize in quality, custom, and unique doors and windows for every style of home. Priority Doors and Windows offers excellent service and selection, with windows by top manufacturers like Fleetwood, Lock & Key, Milgard, and more. The highest value at competitive prices. Visit our showroom off Miramar Road. Just look for San Diego's largest flag. Visit us online at prioritydw.com.
Thank you. And they have Fleetwood windows, which Tim had suggested as a sponsor. So Tim's motto is delivery, inspiring beauty. While preparing for a team retreat in 2019 on expertise versus opinion, Tim reflected on the four distinct phases of his career evolution, and he realized that while he had been an architect, interior designer, a digital innovator, and a leader, what he had always done was strive to deliver a beautiful project, inspiring awe and wonder. That had been his singular purpose from conception to execution. He had pivoted and progressed to gain experience across the breadth of design in order to understand the complete picture from the perspective of both the client and the designer, to learn that design is ultimately about creating emotion. Thank you, Tim, for joining me. So, how are you doing?
I'm good, Michelle. How are you?
Fine. So, what are your first recollections of experiencing architecture?
I'm going to go real low tech today, I think. And I've been thinking about this a lot, actually, because I'm actually developing an online lecture for a series that I'm going to do for a school in London. And one of them is about my career arc. And I've thought back all the way to I was a little kid and what formative things kind of influenced me to be an architect. And I'd say the biggest thing is that I grew up in a split level house. It was a very banal, colonial, split level house in a suburb, but it was really spatially interesting compared to any other families that I knew because, you sort of on the ground floor, you had the garage and the family room, and then there was the basement below that, which dad redid with wood paneling and served as sort of playroom slash adult bar with a beer tap in the refrigerator, and then up above you went up a half a flight of stairs to enter, and that was your living room with sort of family dining room all in one space. And then up another half a flight of stairs was the bedrooms. And it was, a 3-bedroom house, not very big, but my bedroom was at the top of that half a flight of stairs that went up from the living room. And so you were always, you were always going up and down those stairs for one. And I think it really just impacted your understanding of space. I remember doing something a few years ago where I was working with somebody who actually had memory problems. Not an old person. It wasn't dementia. It was like just had problems with short-term memory. And I learned that, when you're a little kid and you crawl and you go under things and you climb over things, that's really influential in your development of your brain and the development of your understanding to your environment. So I think growing up in a split level house just really impacted me. I was always like, there were these spaces like where you'd have these, hidden cubby holes where mom would always hide the Christmas presents that would be sort of under this half space where the closet like was next to something, and then like it was underneath half the space and those sorts of things. So at a young age, I was always kind of trying to figure out how everything related together in that house. And then as I looked at my career later, like the first project I ever worked on in college was actually, we had a project to do a house design. And I designed this house that spiraled up on levels, like 4 rooms on a plan, and each one was like a quarter of a flight of stairs above the other.
Yeah.
So, and then later on, I worked on a project in Kosovo for a client at a house interior design, and that was oddly enough a split level house in a sort of an American style development. But I've always really been fascinated by the connection of the staircase and how this spaces connect, and even how the stair was a place that was part of the living space, and you used to sit on it all the time, and interact with people or sit on it and watch people and that kind of thing. So, I've never been one to, I remember those late night sessions in college where you'd stay up all night with your friends and you'd opine about architecture and the difference between building and architecture. And I don't buy that anymore. Like, that house was architecture, even though it was, designed by a builder. It was really influential to me.
I grew up in an old house because, it was an older area, like kind of, late 1800s, early 1900s. And probably when we lived in it, it was probably maybe 75 years old, I think. Yeah, it's probably 70. Yeah, around 75 years old. So I can definitely remember the stair. We came into this entry hall, and the thing about some of those older homes is, kind of the entry hall was like at least as big as like half of the rooms in the house.
That was not our
entry hall. Pardon me?
That was not our house. The door opened right into the living room.
No, I mean, but it was small. It was small, right? I mean, it was small. It was a smaller house. Well, of course, it had a basement, right? Like all the, it was brick house, right? The basement, first floor, second floor, attic, which the attic, of course, was fully built out, right? So there were 2 more rooms up there. So there were 4 rooms on the second floor, and then, another. And then at one point, which happens in all of these old houses, right? At one point, they must have divided it in some way, because we had like a bedroom that had like a kitchen sink in it and like cabinetry. So they must have divided it at some point, and then they took down the wall or whatever. But we had stairs, but we had these stairs, like the stairs were wider going up to the landing, and then there was this big stained glass window that we had there. And then there were these other stairs that went down into the kitchen, so there were these back stairs, which I always wondered, and people were like, oh, those were the servant stairs. And I'm like, well, the house wasn't that big, and it wasn't like it was this luxury house, but, it's like, I couldn't figure out like why there's stairs. When you did go down those stairs, you could go down the basement stairs also, and of course, like the laundry was down there and stuff. So I was like wondering if that was it. But I can always remember, those, and of course, they're oak, they were oak stairs, and I mean, very, very beautiful. And you can't, you can't, you can't recreate those, and then sitting on the stairs and getting our boots, right? Because we grew up in, we both grew up in Pennsylvania, getting all of our winter gear on to go outside. And it's,
well, we used to climb, because it was a switchback stair, so you could look all the way down to, the bottom, to the landing.
Yes.
Below.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so, of course, we used to climb. We used to climb over the wrought iron railing and jump down to the landing at the bottom. But I think, it was funny because it was like I said, a colonial style house, which meant it had, fake aluminum shutters. But it was really modern in the sense that it wasn't divided between living on the ground floor and bedrooms on the upper floor. It was very integrated that way. And I think that was, gave me a spatial understanding from a young age. Actually, my parents built the house and we moved into it like on my 4th birthday. So from a formative
age. They actually built it. So did you have an architect, or they picked the builder plan?
No.
They picked the builder plan?
It was a builder. It was a builder.
They picked did they pick a builder plan?
Yeah, they picked a plan, and then the builder, it was on a corner. And when they showed up and the builder had oriented the house 90 degrees from the way they wanted it, and they're like, no, we don't want it facing that way, because then the backyard would face the only neighbor, and there was no other neighbor even on the other side of that neighbor. So they had to rotate it, but when they did that, they had to make it narrower. So the garage was like super narrow. You could barely fit a car in it, and the family room was kind of tiny, and but it was cozy. And I remember it had real plaster. It wasn't lath on the walls. It was that kind of perforated, cement board or something. But they were real plaster walls.
Button board.
You couldn't paint. You couldn't paint for like a year. So you moved in and you had these dusty plaster walls. But
I never heard about not having to paint it. So you couldn't paint for a year? Because I never heard that before.
That's what they said.
Maybe they just didn't have it.
Maybe my parents just didn't have the money for the painting. I don't know. That's what we said. That's what they always said. And it had radiant ceiling heat, which was something I actually lived. It was radiant ceiling heat, which was really comfortable. I actually hate forced air heating. I had steam heating.
Forced air too.
It was meant to be really cheap. It was 1968 they built this, and we actually lived in an area of Pennsylvania that was served by the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant. So nuclear energy was supposed to be really cheap. Yeah. And it wasn't necessarily. So.
Well, we still survived, right? We still survived 3 Mile Island.
Yeah.
I didn't have any kids with 3 eyes or anything. I don't know. I'm not saying it's the best thing. I just didn't. What 3 classic buildings do you like and why?
Okay, I'm going to be real low tech here too. I don't have specific examples, but I'm going to start with a medieval cloister.
Okay.
Any kind of courtyard building, actually, like a Roman courtyard house, atrium house. But I think a medieval cloister, especially one that's vaulted with arches, and a fountain in the middle. And I think there's something so sort of quintessentially architectural about a cloister as something that humans create to sort of contain and create a perfect world in the world of chaos, because it's so internalized.
So which ones have you?
I like the sound of it when you're walking in those sort of stone spaces and you can sort of hear that echo. I lived in New York City for a little while, up in Washington Heights, just above the George Washington Bridge. A really amazing neighborhood, very high up. We were like a block from the highest point in Manhattan, and it was within walking distance of Fort Tryon Park, which is where the cloisters are. The Met's sort of agglomeration of medieval cloisters that were imported from Europe, stone by stone, and rebuilt into that museum. I can't think of particular of ones. Studying in Italy, you'd be in so many of them. That's why it's not like it's not like there's one in particular. I think they're just such an amazing type of space that I love to go to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember going through the. Go ahead.
You want me to do my second one?
Yeah, I was just trying to think of a cloister that I was just, go ahead, go on with your second one. Yeah.
My second would be sort of just a classic American pole barn, like a cow barn with a hayloft type of thing.
Yeah.
My mother's sister lived on a farm, and I used to go there as a kid in the summer. And my cousins would build these like forts out of hay bales and things. And I just love that sense of light that you get with the light sort of streaming through the boards in the barn and the dust filtering the air. And I actually worked, when I was living in Wisconsin, remember that period maybe 10 years ago where it seemed like everybody, wherever you went, people were using barn siding, right? And at one point I thought, well, aren't we going to run out of barn siding? And I can tell you, we're never going to run out of barn siding. But I just love looking at barns when you're driving through the countryside, and there's I actually witnessed one over the course of time just completely collapse in Wisconsin, like one day there. And while it had been leaning, and it's kind of tragic, but it had been leaning for a really long time, and then it was just gone. But we had looked at one that looking to restore one, and I learned a lot about those old barns. There was something like the ecosystem of a barn and its sort of reliability and its longevity actually relied on having cows in it to a large degree. The combination of the cows and the hay, kind of kept it warm and humidified and better climate controlled. And once they're not in use anymore, once there's a hole in the roof, if you don't fix it, you're done with. It'll just the water damage will get in, and it's not being controlled anymore, and that's when it just starts to completely deteriorate. But I think there's something about this again, the smell of a barn, the sound of a barn, the things that aren't just the visual things, and if walking in it, the echo. And I actually had a friend. One of the best weddings I ever went to was a friend of mine who got married in rural Pennsylvania, and the whole thing was at a converted barn, just like a very simple old converted barn. So that's my second one. And then I'll say the third one's a real building. It's been a really long time, I'd say, since I went specifically to look at a building. Probably the last one was this isn't, we're going to talk about it anyway, it was this sort of home and studio of Eliel Saarinen outside of Helsinki. And it's called Vitras. Yeah, it's such an amazing place. Very much like, I haven't been to Taliesin in Wisconsin, I've been to Taliesin West. Well, you and I were there together. That was probably the last time. It's been about 10 years since I sort of made a pilgrimage to go see something. But if there were one building I still want to see, would be the Maison de Verre in Paris, that house by Pierre Chareau with the glass block. With that sort of thin glass
Anne Foudron's
block.
favorite classic building is Maison de Verre, and then Tom Kundig was going to say Maison de Verre, but he said, "Oh, somebody already said it," and I said, "Yes, Anne Foudron said it," and now you're,
Well, wow.
Now you're saying Maison de Verre.
No, I think it had that glass block that had sort of the circle impression in it. I think it was. That was a modern it was modernism before minimalism, when modernism actually had detailed transitions of materials, and sort of like coved floors and, industrial plumbing fixtures, and then, the steel elements and the wood and the glass block walls. And I think glass block is one of those materials that really gets a bad rap. But like just a block from me here in Chicago, there was this tiny little coffee shop in an old building. It had a low ceiling, like not even 8 feet, I don't think. And in the bay windows, they had just renovated with glass block, which always looks really ugly, like right from the outside. But the light quality, it was south facing, but the light quality in there was so gorgeous, and it was kind of this like, it was old wood and vintage, sort of classic 80s coffee house vintage furniture. But the light quality was really amazing. So yeah, for a number of reasons, I think, Maison de Verre would be something that I would love someday to see. And any building like that has big kind of industrial windows.
Yeah. I saw Vitrisk when I was in Denmark, that we went on a Scandinavia tour. So we went to Sweden and Finland. And so we went to Vitrisk. I mean, I was amazed. I mean, I loved it. And then of course the whole story, is kind of strange, but yeah.
What?
As far as what
story?
Oh, because they were all right. There were the two families. Pardon me?
The wife swapping? Yeah. It's just sort of another parallel to Frank Lloyd Wright, isn't it? A bit.
But I mean, I think that they were beautiful buildings. I mean, of course, we were there. It was raining, of course, like it was like most, right? It was gray and rainy Finland. So
I was there. It was sunny. It was actually it was late May, I think, or June. So it was like the longest time of the year. So, it was light out at 3:00 in the morning. But I think that architecture is really fun. I've always been a fan of Eero Saarinen as well. But those architects that worked at a time kind of in transition between phases. From a more like they're more. I mean, they were modernizing traditional architecture before they moved into more of a trend. Where you kind of like look at it and maybe on the surface you're thinking like, oh, it's traditional, but then you really have to, it's like, no, it's very modern for those tradition. It's like they were moving forward into something else and, and experimenting. Right. Yeah.
Well, we saw many barns on our journey from Los Angeles to Sheboygan. Sure.
Oh, you're going to tell everyone? You're going to disclose the fact that we rode together in a car for 5 days when I moved from Los Angeles to Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Did we see a lot of barns? I don't even remember.
Yeah, no, I think we did. And then there were a lot of just, just vast nothingness.
Yes.
Just vast.
I've driven across the country. I've done that trip 3 times now. Not the same route that we took, but I've done it now twice through Nebraska and Colorado and Utah, and I don't need to drive that road again.
Well, remember we went to see the Corn Palace. Remember we went to see the Corn Palace? We went to see the Corn Palace, and we're like, okay, well, I could have not seen that or whatever. And then we get 30 minutes down the road, and then there's the Laura Ingalls Wilder. And we're like, we could have gone to the Laura Ingalls Wilder.
I thought that was a few hours off. I thought that was a few hours off the road. Laura Ingalls
The Laura
Wilder.
Ingalls Wilder one?
Yeah, I thought that was a few hour detour. I never did get there.
Oh, I don't know. But
When I was
Corn Palace wasn't off, right?
no,
That
but
wasn't
that was
directly
maybe a
there
half an
either.
hour. We had lunch, didn't we? I thought the Corn Palace was amazing.
You did.
Yeah. Well, they were replacing one of the murals on the outside.
Yes.
That's true American folk art.
It is true American folk art. It definitely is. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like you got to see the big donut in LA, so you got to see Corn Palace.
Right. Well, we were also the only people at Mount Rushmore.
Yes.
That's 6
Which
p.m.
is yes, which everybody like says, oh, the crowd. And I'm like, well, you need to go you need to go the first week of November at 7:00 at night, and there's nobody there.
Right.
Yeah. Oh no, that was amazing. That was amazing. Yeah. When we were the only people there. It was really cold.
I don't remember it being that cold. I remember the town being totally shut down already when we drove through it, which was a little creepy. Very sort of Twin Peaks.
Yeah. And that there were probably people watching us, but we just didn't know where.
Well, I felt safe, because I'm sure there were security cameras all over the place.
Yeah.
Didn't the lights go on as we walked down that flag line promenade? Sort of the
flag
lights came on. Yeah.
And the parking lots, right? The huge parking lots with the thing we like to drive. I'm like, you just have to go first week of November at 7:00 at night.
Yeah.
There's nobody there. Yeah. So what do you like about being an architect?
What do I like about being an architect? Well, I'm going to go back to that intro that you made. The things I thought about when I was preparing for that event with my team. And what I realized, and full disclosure, retired architect. I retired my architecture license last year because I didn't really feel like it's really what I do anymore in terms of, I don't need to do 24 hours worth of ADA continuing education every 2 years to, not that it's not worthwhile if you do that. I just don't do that anymore.
And sustainability, ADA and sustainability.
It's not what I've really done, say, in the last 10 years of my career. And I think at one point, like being an architect was like my identity, when you first start out. And you work really hard to get that license too. I mean, I took the exam when it was like a 5-day or a 4-day in-person thing, right?
I did too. I think it was 5 days, right? Wasn't it 5 days?
It was 4. I think it was 4. 4. I don't remember now. 2.5 days worth of multiple choice questions, a half day of site design, and then a full day design test. And I remember, like, the night before the design test, I went into the office to get a chair, and there was a package on my desk, and I looked at it, and I thought my name was spelled wrong, my last name, and I was literally so brain dead that I had to look at my business card to know how to spell my name. But so, I think it used to be a huge part of my identity being an architect. And then I realized it wasn't anymore. And I realized over the course of all the years of doing architecture, I think when you start out, you're just so excited to build something, right? You spend all this time in school creating concepts and presentations and telling stories to people. And then if you're lucky, you get to go out and you get to build things. And I was really lucky to go out and build things from the get-go. Shout out to Koning Eisenberg Architecture, amazing.
Yay!
Thank you, Julie Eisenberg. Amazing experience. I worked there for 11 years. And over the course of time, it's like you sink all your heart and soul into something. And then when it's done, you have to give it up because it's not really yours anymore. And you kind of have to come to grips with that. And, you know, and over the course of time, I realized it's really the process of it that is the reward. It's the getting to think in a certain way and to get into that zone. You know, I think what people in the world of positive psychology call flow. You get into that flow state when you're drawing something. And you are. It's like the idea is just flowing through your arm to your hand to your pen, because that's how I draw, with a pen, in black ink, people, black ink. Um, no, I told my team once that I couldn't read plans in purple. And I realized I really couldn't read a plan in purple because I'd spent my life drawing in black ink. And you build up this repository of drawings in your head, you know, and you process it in a certain way and you look at it in a certain way. And so over the
And
course of time,
also purple does not reproduce well in a copy. Yeah.
right.
So it's just like a shout out to all those people out there
Right.
who are also highlighting things. Don't highlight drawings because that reads as black also.
Right. So over the course of time, I realized it was really that process that I love so much. And I've come to the conclusion, and so, like, you know, also I worked in hotels, boutique hotels, and sort of that industry transition to sort of the design hotel, or the lifestyle hotel. It was something we never would have talked about in the world of hotels that I worked in. But I think in that sense of design's not a product, design is a process. And ultimately, while you're creating a thing, what you're really doing is creating a thing that people have a reaction to. And it doesn't really matter without the people having the reaction to it and the interaction with it. And that interaction and that reaction is emotion. So ultimately, you're using, you know, space and light and all those things. And that's why when you ask me what were my favorite buildings, you know, I just thought about those places that really speak to many emotions, not just visual, right?
Yeah.
And that what you're doing, and that's and that over the course of your career, you build an expertise that, you know, the reward is, you know, giving people these experiences that they can't necessarily imagine for themselves. Like, say you're redesigning someone's house, or, you know, I did a lot of work in the beginning of my career that was remodel work, you know, additions and remodels, and work in a firm that had a great design profile, and people came to us because they wanted our design aesthetic. But it was always just so rewarding to be able to, and I was young at the time, like, you know, to be able to work with these people who at the time were, you know, maybe a generation older than me, and just, you know, create something. And you realize how most people don't really have the visual imagination to imagine what a space is going to be like. You know, and that's, so you learn to really value that skill that you have. And I remember when I started working at Kohler, my boss, I worked in the tech services department. So I was on a team with, like, the head of transportation and head of aviation and the head of operating systems and the head of all these weird, you know, things that had nothing to do with what I've always done. And my boss told me I was futuristic. Like, I'd never thought of myself as being futuristic, really. But when he talked about it, it's like, well, yeah, I guess you're right, because being able to design a building and have it turn out to be what you think it should be is really creating the future.
Yeah.
So
you're creating. Yeah.
And so I learned, like, that process, you know, just that process of going through, you know, you've been given a problem, you have to satisfy, lots of different things, budget, function, schedule, et cetera, and then you also have to make people feel something from it when it's done. And something that I really learned when I was at Kohler working with a team, that you really it's not just visual imagination, but you have to be able to imagine what it's going to feel like.
Yeah.
In order for it to really be successful, I think. So that's what I've always liked about being an architect. And subsequently, being an interior designer, I'm a little bit of an oddball in that I had a career as an interior designer after being an architect, and have a whole appreciation for window treatments that most architects don't have.
You know what? There's two window treatments that, well, maybe three, I suppose. Okay, that I will go with. Okay, well, maybe four now. I don't know. Okay, just like very simple blinds, very simple roll shades, just simple roll shades. Yeah. Like the ones that we had in that little bungalow that we had in Venice, where they mounted it on the bottom, and then we rolled them up and hooked them. Yes, roller shades. Yeah. And hooked them on the thing so we could still see like the top part, the top lights, and then you could get those. And then just window shears that are just very very transparent.
A wall of shears can solve a lot of problems.
Yes. And then and linen, like I have like these linen curtains in a closet, floor to ceiling linen curtains, and then velvet drapes. Those are like those are the window treatments that, even though I have no window treatments anywhere, that I some in my adult kids have curtains in their room, right? Because they've had them there since they were younger. But otherwise, there's no other window treatments on any of my windows. Yeah, my brother actually installed some shades in the one bathroom because he said people could see in. I'm like, nobody's looking at you, so it's and so we just leave it up. I mean, he's not here anymore. We just leave it open all the time. But yeah. So what window treatments? And I mean, obviously, you worked for Ian Schrager, doing while you were at Koning Eisenberg, working on the Mondrian, and then a lot of the different hotels. And then you also had your own firm and did the hotels that, in London and other places. So what are some of your experiences, or what do you think that are kind of like the best experiences that you created there?
The best experiences I created.
As far as emotion, right? Like it's a hotel, it's emotion. I know I think the one hotel room actually, or whatever.
One of the lectures I'm preparing is about the hotels I did in London, Sanderson and St. Martin's Lane. And talking about hospitality and brand. And there's this really great, it's been made into a number of videos that you can find on Vimeo or YouTube, but there's this talk that Ira Glass, the This American Life writer, he talks about the gap, and he talks about, when you're first starting out, he refers to it as taste, which is a word that I really despise, but I think, you need to start out with a good taste, but you need to develop expertise and experience. But he talks about when you're first starting out, you have really great taste, but you can't really necessarily execute something really well. Like you just don't have that skill set, and what it takes to sort of close that gap, and how much time it takes, and how much, effort, and it takes a lot of work, and you finally get there. and sort of encouraging younger people, don't give up, like we all go through this, right? And I'd say that those projects were about, say, 10 years into my working in interiors, 25 years into my actual design career post college. And I was in a position where, because it was post Great Recession, I had my own business, but it was just me. And I managed to get these two projects because of the work that I'd done. So it was a weird position and it was also, everyone that was at the brand was new. So I was kind of the keeper of the secret sauce of what the brand was. And so it was very strange in the sense of doing something on your own. I have hired people to work with me, and I collaborated with artists and people to make things. But I think it was the best version of closing the gap of what I needed to do in compared to the level of expectation being so high to recreate these designs. And it was something that bothered me in the beginning a lot, that they'd always say that I had reimagined Philippe Starck designs. It's like there was nothing left. like it was almost all new, but he still got the credit. And I really came to peace. I made my peace with that later. My name is on their website still, but I made my peace with that. It was kind of like collaborating with him, but not in person, where you have to, sort of try to create a story out of what you think is going on, but then you have to totally reinvent it, make it have that same emotion, but be all new. And one of them is very decorative, or is, it's about decoration, say, and one of them is much more experiential. So they were also very different, and part of the goal was to make them even more different than they were, because while they were different to us, a lot of people would probably think they looked almost exactly the same, but to us they were different as designers. And the goal was to kind of make them bigger, better, more luxurious, more comfortable, but sort of maintain that spark. And I think they're both still in service today. The photos are still on their websites. It's 10 years later. I think they might be redoing. I heard that that Stark was going to redo Sanderson after I did it. So, but I think they were.
Oh, he's remodeling. He's redoing Tim Andreas.
Yeah, I don't think they would actually say that. But I think those were two projects, and I think Lodge Kohler, the hotel that we designed in Green Bay. Green Bay. I can never remember how they pronounced it. Green Bay. They pronounce it Green Bay. It's not Green Bay. It's Green Bay.
Green Bay. Yeah.
Green Bay. But that was a really great experience, working with my team and working with Herb Kohler, and just kind of trying to create. I think it might be the only 4-diamond luxury sports themed hotel. But trying to really to create a brand around something, like a company like that. So that was a pretty rewarding experience.
Yeah. So what would you like to say about the future of architecture?
Oh God, it's funny, as I've been working on these lectures and looking at all this stuff and thinking about, because I'm mainly I'm talking to interior designers. And it was funny.
These are the lectures that you're doing for the school in England.
For a school in London. And so I remember when I was working on something in one of the last projects I did at Kohler, I redesigned the furniture in the corporate office lobby, which had not been done for 40 years. And it was old Baker furniture from when they rebuilt Baker, from when they bought Baker. And so we were designing everything. And, it was right across the courtyard from where my office was. So I made sure we went over there a lot. And, we would buy, yards of fabric to look at it and all this stuff. And one of the people that I worked with was like, said to me as we were comparing like 5 different velvets, she's like, you need to see it. And I'm like, yeah, I need to see it. You don't need to see it. Because I think you can only do so much with your imagination. And it's, as I've been thinking about, speaking to interior designers and the work that I've done in interior design, I realize that as an interior designer, I really do need to see it much more. Because, and I think there's a reason for that. I'm going somewhere with this, believe it or not.
Okay.
That
I'm wondering if it's the same place I'm going with it.
No, that
Go ahead.
You sit on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually harder to imagine the way velvet is going to look in the light from one direction or another. And part of the project was about, having different materials in the same color palette and how you moved through the space and trying to create a life in the space that nobody's really going to be sitting in most of the time, right? And so I've really thought about like, and maybe it's because I don't have as much experience actually as an interior designer, and I never took courses in fabric technology or anything like that. But I need to see it more when I'm an interior designer. I need to see those materials together, how they look in different light and that kind of thing. Where in architecture, it made me realize that architecture is kind of an abstraction. Like, other than the floor that you walk on and the doorknobs and the handrails, like, you don't really touch it that much, right? And that's kind of why I talked about the buildings that I love so much, because they're buildings that you really do experience with all of your senses, right?
Yeah.
When you talk about a barn, like, so much of a barn is the smell, right?
Exactly.
And even like
and I mean, I can smell hay, right? I can smell hay and straw when you're talking about that in animals,
right?
and the wood.
Right. The damp smell and the sound of walking in a cloister, right? And but there are more senses than just your visual senses. So where are we going with architecture, where I'm so tired of seeing AI architecture on Instagram? It's like, oh, wow, that thing that either looks like, Maxfield Parrish or some inflated thing or something covered with feathers. And now I'm probably sounding like a codger. But in a weird way, it's just an expansion of the abstraction. Like, architecture already is very abstract to a certain degree, I think, which is kind of unfortunate maybe. But like, when you think about it, how many times do you go into a space now in the world of architecture that we make where you're impacted by the smell or the sound, like, in a good way? Like, not in a loud, like, cacophonous echo chamber that's an assault on your senses. Like, where do you actually experience architecture that is all of those senses? And so, like, I think about that world of AI, and I'm not interested in it per se. I think I would totally use it as a tool to do presentations, right? Because if I could create those presentations more easily than I could before. But I think it's
to show it to the client.
It's reducing architecture even more to just the visual. And we live in an age, whatever, the last 150 years or however long that we've had the world of photography. I think what's really interesting in the world of interior design, like somewhere around the 80s or 90s, and now it's like everything's gray, right? Everything that you see in interior designer it's almost like it's in black and white. And it's funny because when you look at the designs that were done in the 90s that were sort of inspired by the Deco period and early modern interior design, they were looking at black and white books. And sometimes you see the rare photo of a Jean-Michel Frank room, and it was like an emerald green sofa and gold straw marquetry and these rich, vibrant colors. But we've been so influenced by the world of photography and not the real thing that we've created this kind of totally neutral aesthetic.
It's funny. My daughter,
it's devoid of color and devoid of all of those other sort of senses. So, I don't know where it's heading. I actually think maybe there's, it's happening. It's whatever. And I grew up totally, glued to the television as a child, right? So it's not like I'm anti-media, but maybe like architecture, can help us stay human instead of become androids, if we can find a way to bring back the light and the sound and the smell and those temperature qualities and all of those
I
things.
can remember Kelly, when she was little, she must have been looking at black and white photos or a black and white movie, and she asked me, when did the world turn to color?
Oh my God, that's amazing.
It's really little. I mean, and these are things like, right, like one time, it was raining and she says it's raining like tears, right? It's like from a 3-year-old, but of course she was raised around a bunch of marketers. So maybe she was gathering way more information, but I mean, and she is a photographer, and some of her stuff is black and white, but most of it is color. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we're looking at these images that were black and white, and then we think oh, okay, when meanwhile, it was actually right. There's a lot of color in it. Like, let's think of it's like a place that you go to, and it's just much more colorful than what it actually. Than actually you think of it. But anyway, I'll think of it. But yeah, I think also too, I mean, I used to, I don't know, did you ever sew?
I have, in junior high, I made a plaid vest for a barbershop quartet. We had a neighbor who was like the neighborhood seamstress.
Yes.
Helped me with that. Yeah.
Yeah. My mom used to sew a lot of our clothes when we were younger until I got in the 5th grade. And then I'm like, oh, I'm not, so it's like, I had she would make these amazing things. And of course I just, hated them. Right. And cause I just wanted this crappy stuff that you can buy in the store or whatever. And then after, in 5th grade, and then when I look back at these photos of us, and she had made these little Nehru jackets for my brother and I out of patterned corduroy. They were absolutely, I mean, it was really great. So for me, it's like being around that and being around fabric and textiles. For me, it's like I see, I wanted, I designed my wedding dress, right? But I wanted to design it the way, and it's like I went and looked at, different things. And I did, I wanted silk taffeta as opposed to other taffeta that was it was because of the way that, the way that it looked, right? I mean, it feels different, it looks different.
Right.
And, velvet is there's a million different velvets, right? It's stuff is thin, it's thicker, it has more weight to it, it can hold, it will hang differently. I mean, just the same way as clothes, right? It hangs differently, it drapes differently. How are you going to create that, that look of something with fashion? How are you going to create that detail in fashion? How are you going to create that detail in interiors, with the same thing?
Well, even in an architecture.
And nothing bothers me more than calling up to ask about a product or whatever. And then they say oh, well, just look at our website. And I'm like, no, I want a sample. It's I cannot tell the color of that on the website. even, Sherwin-Williams will do the color mix thing every year. And it's like you're looking up there and, you're watching a video of paint, and that the paint colors are not, it's like you'll look at the paint colors for like all these different ads, and it's different, they're all different shades, right? Because that's the way it looks, and it's not the tree. And then, when you put paint on, oh, how are we going to pick paint? And I'm like, you don't pick paint from like a tiny swatch. I said, you have to put it on the building. I said, you have to put it on the building. But, well, can I not do that? No, you can't not do that, because you're going to paint that whole building and it's not going to work. Like, that color is not going to work, because what you see here isn't going to look, it's like, what is it going to look like in the light? How is the light going to affect that color? It's like, where are you, right? Like, we're in Southern California, right? You're in Chicago now. I mean, there's a world of difference between the colors in those different environments, right? It's like, all of the bright colors that you see in Scandinavia, right? It's because it's gray there most of the time, right?
Right. Yeah.
Now I'm like looking at a lot of the dark colors they're putting in the interiors and Scandinavia, and I was like, oh my gosh, like it's gonna, it's during the winter, it's like dark from some, I'm like wondering how people are, and it looks beautiful, it looks moody and everything, but to live in that space the whole time is probably going to be pretty dismal.
You need a variety.
You need a variety, exactly.
And in Wisconsin, I had yellow linen shears, and they really warmed up the space.
Yeah.
In those winter months.
One of my friends he grew up in Southern California. He's in Portland for 5 months working on a project up there. And he was saying that he was like, I just can't believe it's gray all the time. And I'm like, yeah, it was gray. Like when I said, when I looked, when we were looking at different places to move from LA, I was looking at the climate and all the different places and how many cloudy days there were. And so we were thinking about Seattle at one point, and I said, well, it's supposed to rain in Seattle. Oh, it's supposed to, and then I looked, and the amount of gray days was actually higher in Pittsburgh than it was in Seattle. And I said, oh, I guess I could probably live in Seattle, no problem, because I've already done it. And I've lived in Denmark, so it's like, but I do like the sun, right? I go like 2 days or whatever. We have rain now, and it's like, I'm like, okay, like luckily it's peeking in and out. But, so is there anything else you'd like to say, Tim?
Oh, I don't know, Michelle. I could talk forever, but I'm not going to. Thank you. I'll say thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I had a great time. Yeah. Now I'm, now I was finally able to get Tim, when he didn't have an NDA for any of the places that he worked at.
Oh, right.
Where he's actually allowed to do a podcast with me. All right. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
And I'd like to again thank Priority Door and Window for sponsoring this podcast. Thank you.